From We Are Spectacular, this is the Spectacular Marketing Podcast, a podcast about everything brand, marketing, digital and social for the food and drink industry and beyond. Today I've popped into the Edgerton House Hotel, and that's on the command of our next guest, an amazing guy called Mr. Hugh Richard Wright. And Hugh is a man about town. He's, to me anyway, a bon viveur or bon vivant, and really is tapped into the restaurant scene, what's going on, where to go, and he really is one of the key players in terms of PR and networking in the industry. Hugh gave me a great tip saying that one of the best martinis in London, if not the best, is at the Edgerton House Hotel. So I'm going to test it out and I'll let you know what I thought. Welcome to Hugh. I'm really hoping he's wearing his glittery shoes, and I think we're in for, an hour or 45 minutes or however long we go on of fun, laughter and interesting insights to maybe the more brighter side and the party side of the restaurant, hotel and bar business. It gives me the most pleasure ever today to just, I know what's in store for the next hour, to welcome Mr. Hugh Richard Wright. Hello.
Hello, Mark. How lovely to be here.
We never asked this before. What have I to call you in terms of your job?
I think the easiest way is just, I say restaurant PR. There's a bit of communications consultant in there as well, but restaurant PR covers it.
Yep. Great.
I'm not precious.
Well, I think there's that thing that a job title doesn't define the person.
No.
And if that's the case, you're the biggest example of this.
Jack of all trades, master of maybe two of them.
Bon viveur, bon vivant.
Bon viveur, yeah, definitely bon vivant. Man about town.
Yes.
Yeah. Shoe addict, lover not a fighter, born in a crossfire hurricane, all of the above.
And that is the profile, right? That's
it, that's me, yeah.
So, a couple of things. We were just chatting before we came in. We were talking about disposable cups and Bag for Life.
Keep cups.
And all the rest of it.
Yes, I have a keep cup at last.
And you're sporting the most middle class.
Yes, it is literally the most middle class. I have the Waitrose keep cup, and in fact, I'm sort of sufficiently stingy in my environmental responsibility that I waited until Waitrose restocked their £3 keep cup rather than their £20.
So was that a Waitrose essential?
I don't know. I think so. Yeah, it's in there like with the artichoke hearts and truffle oil, all those essential things that you absolutely can't live without. But I absolutely can't live without.
And does it just repel like instant coffee? So if you try and pour it in,
that's
got this magnetic
yes,
field.
It has exactly that. It has an invisible meniscus over the top. So if you try to put in Nesquik, although saying that, I'm very egalitarian in my coffee taste.
It's just caffeine.
I'm no snob, but anything. Yeah, so I have my keep cup, and I'm very toting it around with great middle class glee,
skiffing with the value that you've got in your hand.
Absolutely,
$3.99.
virtue signalling as I walk down the street, sipping my latte from my Waitrose keep cup.
Nice. So yeah, just so excited to have you. And I think with a lot of the guests I've had, it's very much in terms of the usual business that we're in. So we're a lot more, without being too disparaging to us, but, we're a lot more maybe in fast casual and takeaway and coffee, and, but you live in a bit of a premium world, which is exciting.
I do live in a bit of a premium world. Yes, I'm kind of the Madonna of...
I was just thinking that.
The Madonna of restaurant PR, yeah.
So, it's an exciting world for me. I think having a bit of, working class or maybe even upper working or whatever background, sometimes I just don't feel I belong. I think people look at it and think he's going to take the silver.
I don't know. I think it's the thing with the thing I always say with restaurants and any elements of the industry, whether it's PR, whether it's front of house, whether it's back of house, marketing, anything is ultimately it is hospitality.
Yeah.
It's about being welcoming. And in days past, when I sort of used to do in-house training, like customer service training, because I've got a bit of a background in that, I used to do in-house customer service training with people, and I remember once seeing a complaint. I won't say about which restaurant, I will spare their blushes, but they said, we felt unwelcome. The staff made us feel unwelcome. And I got everyone together, literally everyone, and said, if you make people feel unwelcome in a restaurant, you fundamentally failed. You might as well pull down the shutters, lock the doors, switch off the lights and go home, because you failed, because it is hospitality. And that extends to the whole of it. So actually, whether it's, high end or low end or fast casual or whatever, I think everyone should be welcome. All are welcome.
It's true. I mean, I think it's maybe more, the thing that you've got on your shoulder, or, you're thinking, God, I don't know if I should be here.
Although it's like with anything, you can run away or you can run towards. And the thing is, I mean, I am also, you might not think it, and people very seldom think it from my accent, but I'm a working class boy. My mother was a teacher, my father was an engineer, and grew up in, very, very secure and lovely, wonderful surroundings, but not financially well off at all. And eating out was something you did once a year, maybe.
Wasn't often.
It was rare, and when you did, it might be sort of like the village pub, or it might be, if you were really fancy, like the Italian place in the nearest town, and you'd have that, cheese that smelt like stinky feet and great big pepper grinders and everything. But that was like maybe once, twice a year treat.
Yeah.
And as I've sort of grown up and, moved to London and, been eating out, I've always loved eating out.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's a case of, it's not something that, fancy meals in highfalutin restaurants with, Michelin stars and everything is absolutely not a part of my upbringing. But, I run towards it, I love it. I embrace it. And I think you can either sort of think, oh, maybe this isn't for me, or you can think, hell yes, this is for me, and grab it with both hands.
No, it's a fantastic world to be in, and I think once I sort of left, I was sort of travel and then banking, and then once I get into sushi, and then also as an extension of that, the food and drink world, you just thought, what a lovely, friendly industry that we've got.
Exactly that, and I have definitely found my home in the restaurant world. I mean, that is, I'm saying, like with you, I've got a not checkered. Checkered sounds dodgy, but my if you look at my CV, for example, you would think, well, how did he go from studying French to being a personal shopper to working for Eurostar to working in legal services to working in charity fundraising to then being in communications for restaurants and then starting a PR agency, which in a nutshell is what happened. But one thing has led to another.
Yeah.
There's never just been, I'm going to have a total change. Everything has led to another in one way or another.
So did you have an idea of where you wanted to end up? Or
Absolutely.
Is it...
I never have.
Okay.
I have absolutely never had a when I grow up I want to be. I have never had a plan. I've kind of, I've been in this incredibly fortunate position actually in life, which is that funnily enough, I was talking to a friend about this last night, and this isn't like we were joking before about my journey, but I had a real formative experience when I had a Saturday job when I was in school, when I was 15, and as we were encouraged to do, and I remember you had to get a work permit from the local council to say that your parents had agreed that you could work or whatever. I had a Saturday job, and it was in a high street chain, and it's nothing about the snobbery, but it was just about. I basically found that I hated it. I did it for a few months and I just hated it. And at 15 years old, I handed in my notice, and the manager of the store, who's this sort of big figure on a pedestal, actually, who normally wouldn't have dealt with maybe a Saturday boy, but he just said, we like you and we think you're very good, and, wonder why you're leaving. And I said, because every Saturday morning I'm getting up and I just don't want to come to work. I really, really don't like it. And he said, okay, well, that's hard to hear, but that's probably the most mature resignation I've heard from anyone of any age. And I did, and I kind of promised myself at 15 years old that I would never do anything I hated. I would never be in a job that I didn't really, really enjoy. And that's always been my point of leaving. So my jumping off point for anywhere has been when it gets to stage where it's like, do you know what, if I'm not enjoying it 100% anymore, and if I'm, as a result, not giving 100% anymore, then I move on and do something new.
Yeah. And so what about sort of the later stages or the latter stages to kind of get you to...
How did I get to where I am
And how
now?
did it start? And, it's always exciting things.
It started with a blog. So when I was 30, I started writing a blog, which was a fairly new thing then. And it wasn't about food. It wasn't a restaurant blog. It was just... It was an online diary, which is what blogs started off as, and it's a bit of a cliche, but I guess what I was aiming for was the whole male Carrie Bradshaw thing. I was single at the time. I was, dating and shagging a lot, and and it was just an online diary, and it was about dates. It was about holidays. I was traveling a fair bit at the time, so it was about travel. It would be about clothes, because I've always loved clothes. And I loved it. I mean, there was no end goal. It wasn't to be a blogger, it wasn't to be a writer, it was purely a hobby. But then I found that because I enjoyed like the fact that it was unedited, I could write as much as I wanted. I just didn't have the time to do it. I didn't have the time to write about everything. So after a couple of years, I thought, okay, I like writing and I enjoy having a platform, but I'll focus on one thing. And it was either going to be travel, which I was doing a lot of at the time, but I discounted travel because I thought, well, I won't always be doing a lot of travel. I thought, well, if you're not traveling, you can't really write a travel blog. Or fashion, which I, have always absolutely loved and have worked in at various times in my life. But again, with fashion, if you don't do it immediately, it's redundant, and even more so now. I mean, this was like sort of 10 years ago, and now fashion is even more fast moving, and so fashion I sort of reluctantly discounted. And the other thing that I found myself writing about a lot of the time was eating out, because like I said before, I've always loved eating out. So I found that was something I was writing about a lot. So I decided to focus on that. But it genuinely, it might sound disingenuous, but it really wasn't. I didn't set out to be a restaurant blogger. It wasn't like, right, I'm going to have a restaurant blog and I'm going to be a self-appointed critic and I'm going to get free stuff. It was just, okay, I like writing, I like having a platform for publishing my writing, and this is something I do enough to sustain writing regularly, because I eat out. At the time it was, at least once a week. Now it's more like, once a day.
And how long ago? But that's the thing, it's so easy now, isn't it? It's everywhere.
Yeah.
But so I don't mean to put an age on you or anything, but how long ago was that? And then
that would have been about 2010. I mean, you can put on age on me. It's fine, 42. So yeah, that would have been about 8 years ago, because I sort of had the blog as just like, say the online diary for about sort of 3 or 4 years, and then it was after about 3 or 4 years that I decided to focus it. So yeah, we'd be talking about probably about 2010. We're talking about 8 years ago, 8, 9, no, maybe more, maybe 9. 2009 probably. So we're talking about 9-10 years ago.
And where were your favourite places at the time? Where did you love to go?
I mean, I've always, it's the question I dread being asked. When people say like, I forget what's your favourite restaurant in London.
Scratch that one out.
I can't answer. No. But in terms of my favourite places have always been, they were then and they are now. My favourite places have always been places where holistically you have a good time. And by that, I mean, obviously food is important. And I know there are some people who, when they go out, they are purely looking at food. Yeah. They don't really care about the service, or they maybe don't notice the service, as long as it's not terrible.
Yeah.
They're purely looking at what's on their plate. Some people really don't care about food at all, and they just go to have a good time. And that's why, I won't name names, I'm not that much of a bitch, but that's why there are some restaurants where the food is objectively terrible. Yeah. But they thrive because of the scene. They thrive because of the music or the bar or the crowd or the selectiveness of admission or whatever. The places that I like and have always loved are places where the food is good. If it's very good or outstanding, then great. But where the food is good, but also the service is great and the decor is nice and the ambience is nice. So, I've always, and, disclosure, they're not, never have been a client of mine, but this is why I've always loved almost all of Caprice Holdings restaurants.
Yeah.
Back when they were much smaller, I remember sort of Caprice restaurants when it was still Chris Corbin and Jeremy King. So places like the original Ivy, places like, Scott's, Daphne's. Yeah. I've always loved. Yeah. So places that combine good food, nice cocktails, great decor, great service.
The original Ivy's just such a unique place, in that no matter where I've been sat in there, I always feel like it's almost kind of private. But then it can be not private if you want it to be. It's just such a neat trick in that
I think
room.
it's like with any of these places. Like if you care about the good table, bad table thing, and I mean as in tables given by status. I don't mean like the bad table near the loos or the bad table that's in a draft or whatever. If you care about like sort of the good table, bad table, am I sitting in the right place? Like at the Delaunay, for example, it's am I in the horseshoe? Am I in the right place? Am I in one of the best tables? Then I think the Ivy's always been amazing for that. But I always felt that, I remember like the old Ivy, before sort of the most recent refurbishment, and they're really the really bad tables were in the bar. It's like if you're in the bar, you might as well have not been in the Ivy because you weren't actually even in the restaurant. Yeah. But then I remember seeing Boy George eating in the bar once, and I just thought, do you know what? If George will have a bad table, then even a bad table's good enough for me. So I think if you care about that whole status tables thing, it can be fun. But,
I think it just winds you up as well. If you're thinking like that.
Yeah.
And then So the blog happened.
So the blog happened, and then, at the time, it makes you sound like old Father Time, but at the time there really weren't many restaurant blogs. There were maybe sort of a dozen of us in London. And everyone knew everyone, and it could get a little bit sort of cliquey at times, because the early adopters, in terms of like the operators and PRs who picked up on this new phenomenon of the restaurant blogger, would often like invite everyone to a dinner, and so you'd sort of see 6 to 10, not identical because everyone had their own writing style, but you would see like 6 to 10 blog posts about the same place coming out in the same week, and it could seem a little bit cliquey. But then obviously as it expanded, and as well as then as more restaurants opened and more blogs started. So anyway, so I wrote this blog, and it became sort of moderately well known. It coincided with...
What was it called?
It was called 12.5%.
Oh, okay.
It's called 12.5%.com.
Still around?
Well, do you know the content is still online, but some swine managed to steal the URL out from under my nose. But it's still, I think it's 12.5%.blogspot.co.uk. So
Okay.
the content is
we
all
can
still...
put it in the notes. Yeah.
The content is all still there, but the .com has gone. And that sort of started to become moderately well known. And then through that, I then sort of started to get invited to things, by PRs. And, I remember the first time, a group who had fairly recently appointed a digital marketing manager, which, back in 2009 was like, wow, brave new world.
Big deal.
I remember them like sort of taking me out, and it was a sort of really quite formal. So, how do you like to work, and, testing the ground. And then I started getting offered, little bits of writing work here and there, or being asked to contribute to things. And sometimes it was paid and sometimes it wasn't. But, I did start to write sort of other titles, and, like I said before, the reason I started blogging in the first place, I loved writing. Yeah. So, of course, being given a platform to write anywhere was great. And then I started getting some more regular gigs. So I started contributing sort of regularly, about sort of monthly, a piece to the Telegraph website, which sort of was about London restaurant trends. And, of course, you can imagine writing for a site with the reach of the Telegraph. That sort of started, opening doors and creating new opportunities. And then the really big deciding bit was it got to the stage where people knew me, or when I met people for the first time, they just assumed that I was a writer. They assumed that was what I did full time. I was actually working in charity fundraising, was my day job. And I got made redundant. From a charity job. And it was brilliant. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me, I was at a crossroads, and it forced me to think, well, okay, do I want to stay in charity fundraising and try to replace like for like? And I could, not to brag, but, at the level I was at, I could have walked into any charity recruitment agency and been in employment by the next day. So redundancy didn't faze me, but it did force me to think, well, am I doing what I really want to be doing? And I thought, well, if other people think of me as a writer, is that what I want to do? And long story short, I decided that it was. So I, went freelance, decided that I was a freelance writer. That's what I was, and let people know that was what I was and what I was doing and what I cost. I think that's always incredibly important.
And how did you figure that out?
A little bit of guesswork, a little bit of asking around, asking friends. So one of the things I did, so when I reached this crossroads, I say I was, made redundant, and I was thinking, well, do I want to be a writer? I sent an email, and I've still got, because I hardly ever delete anything, I've still got all the replies somewhere. I sent an email to about 30 or so people, some of them food writers, some of them people who freelance but in other industries, some of them just sort of friends whose opinions I respected. And I asked them all the same 3 questions, and the questions were, and it wasn't fishing for compliments. I really wanted people to be blunt. And I said, I'm thinking of becoming a freelance writer post-redundancy. Knowing me as you do you think I've got what it takes? Second question was, if no, what do you think I could be doing? Or is there anything you think that I would be particularly good at that I could maybe try my hand at? Because I'm open to suggestions. And then the third one was just, do you have any experience of redundancy? And if so, have you got any tips? Yeah. And it was brilliant. And, people were incredibly generous with their answers and their time.
Brilliant.
And basically, I decided, actually, yes, I can do this. So I did, and made a living out of it, and paid the bills and kept a roof over my head, which was great. But then it was after about 6 months, only about 6 months of being freelance, I was then approached via sort of a mutual contact about the possibility of going in-house with a restaurant group, with Aqua Restaurant Group, who were about to open almost simultaneously 2 huge restaurants at the Shard, as well as having another 2 in the West End. And that was funny because there was never really an interview process for that. It wasn't that I didn't apply for a particular role. I started off having a chat with their MD about, we initially started chatting about being a social media manager and possibly doing it part-time. And we had all sorts of conversations. Then I met the owners, and then it did become clear that actually this wasn't really going to be freelancing for them a couple of days a week. This was potentially, this was very much an in-house role. And eventually we reached the stage where there, a new job description was written for a much bigger role, which was communications manager. And initially, and I've still got the email somewhere, initially we said, well, tell you what, why didn't I think it's going to be full-time. Why didn't I do full-time for 6 months? And we'll review it after 6 months.
Yeah.
Once we've got these 2 huge restaurants open, and then might revert, say, back to being part-time 3 days a week, for example. And it certainly wasn't. It stayed full-time, and I stayed there for nearly 3 years. And it was absolutely fantastic. But it was during that time that, as communications manager for this group, I was, our company and our team were the client of some of the bigger PR agencies. And as a blogger, and as in my short tenure as a freelance writer, I'd obviously been on the receiving end of pitches from PRs.
Right.
So I'd seen it as a blogger and as a writer, and then I sort of worked alongside some big agencies, so I sort of saw how they worked. But then also through just being very actively involved in the restaurant business and getting to meet people, and as I've said, just loving hospitality, loving restaurants, loving hanging out in restaurants, loving chatting to the people who are involved in them. I've sort of realised that there was a niche, there was a gap, Why do you start any business? Because you find a gap, there's a gap. And the gap was that basically the kind of small owner-operated restaurants, which were springing up in droves, I found were going down one of 2 paths when it came to PR. They were going with one of the big PR agencies, who, don't get me wrong, were doing a very good job, but were charging very big agency fees and were almost doing too much or offering too much. They were doing more than a small, one-man band potentially needed. And as a result, people were really, really stretching and struggling to afford it because they knew that they needed PR, but because the only people offering it were big agencies, they were really over committing what they could pay, and then ultimately feeling quite disappointed because they maybe felt that they weren't getting return on their investment, because even though they might be getting the reviews and the press, it was costing them so much. It was hard to see an ROI on that. Or they were going to one of the other extremes, which was that they felt that PR was a luxury they couldn't afford, and so they were doing it or trying to do it themselves and doing it badly. And I saw some really shocking examples, just thinking, oh God, why is there no one doing as good a job as a big agency, but proportionate to what you need at a price which you can afford, but which doesn't undervalue their labour? And then it was like,
bingo,
light bulb.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I wasn't unhappy at Aqua. It was a great role, but I'm sure you'll appreciate this. Once you've got that idea and you realise that no one's doing it, and you realise that actually potentially the best person to do it is you. Yeah. That's when you get the fire in your belly. Yeah. And I thought about it, and and did some sums and thought, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. And that was almost 3 years ago. I started the business on 1st of October 2015. So almost 3 years ago. And so that's how I got there. So from blogger to PR in the space of about 10 years.
And then did you have a client bagged before you left, or did you leap of faith? Or?
I had it. Well, here's the thing, actually. So I didn't actually have anyone formally signed on the dotted line, but I had started having discussions with people that gave me the confidence that there was a market for what that there was absolutely a market for what I wanted to do. So I was confident that I would get business. And as it was, once I, handed in my notice and I sort of formally, announced that I was, setting up the business, and that I was, this is what I was doing and this is the kind of service I was looking to provide, quite quickly sort of people started coming to me and expressing an interest. But the funny thing was that actually the couple of people who I'd sort of been in conversation with, who I thought would probably become my first clients actually didn't. That's often the way. It'd just be the way. They actually didn't, but I had good faith that they would be there. And then once as I've got one, I then got two, and then snowballed from there.
Brilliant. And then in terms of you running the business and stuff, because it is just you,
it's
right?
just me. It is just me.
So how do you handle that? Because I think a problem a lot of freelancers, agencies, whatever you want to say, have is they'll say yes to everything.
So number one is that you can't say yes to everything. So basically, when I was setting up the business, and it wasn't an especially scientific approach, but it's an approach that has served me well and worked, was that I basically I started off by really thinking, right, okay, what do I need to earn? Mm-hmm. I was thinking, like, right, what do I need to earn? What do I need to earn? Because don't get me wrong, I didn't. My motivation in setting up the business, well, the altruistic motivation was to provide the service that I felt wasn't being provided. I just felt there was a good business idea there. And then the personal motivation was just to do something that I felt that I would love doing and to be happy and to have the freedom of being self-employed and, and not answerable to anyone except for my clients and the in-and revenue. God love them. So I started off by working out what I needed to earn, and I just thought, right, okay, in terms of if it were a salary, allowing for tax and NI and overheads and everything, what do I need to earn? And then I thought, okay, then I worked out, right, what can I charge? Mm-hmm. What can I charge people? What is that sweet spot going to be? Essentially that is something that is affordable to the kind of businesses I wanted to serve, but also doesn't undervalue my labour, because I think that's, for self-employed people and freelancers, that's an incredibly important thing, is not undervaluing, your labour and your skills. I worked out what I could charge, and then I basically divided. Then I thought, well, okay, how much holiday do I want to be able to take, and how many hours am I going to work, and then how many hours is it reasonable for a client to expect? So if my salary divided by, what it's possible to charge people, less holidays plus tax comes to this. And that, eventually I sort of got to a number of, right, okay, I can provide the service at the quality that I want to provide it to, or what I need to charge for it to earn what I need to earn to this number of people. And that was it. So in terms of not taking on too much, or indeed not taking on too little, it was like, right, okay, I need to have this number of clients. And essentially what I worked out was, if I have X number of clients, I will be earning what I project that I need to earn. That said, I could get by on one fewer.
Yeah.
So, if I only have at any given time this number of clients because there's churn or there's just a gap between contracts or whatever, I'll be fine on this. This is like what I really want to be doing, to be earning what I want to earn and to be putting money away for tax and to have a bit of a cushion in case anything goes wrong. But if I can also do, and the maximum, if I can do the maximum, then, that will do very nicely, and that will actually be holidays and shoes and martinis, as well as tax and NI and overheads and everything. Where I've been incredibly fortunate is that pretty much the entire 3 years I've had the business, I've been at that number, at that maximum number. I've sort of been at the top of it. There've been very few occasions where it's dropped down, and so that's the business side of it. But your question was, how do you work out what to do? And really, that was it. It was like you divide what you need to earn by the number of clients you can take on and the number of hours there are in a day, and you're just realistic about it.
Just count it in shoes.
Yeah, well, yes, exactly. Yes. How many martinis at Egerton House is this worth?
So thinking about good PR, bad PR, all the rest of it, people have got various opinions. There's the social media side, there's big agencies perhaps doing too much or turning the handle, this and that. What's your sort of view on that?
I always have to start with sort of the from the position of, I'm not necessarily the best in the business. Equally, I'm certainly not the worst. So, there might be people who say, well, who's he to pronounce on good and bad PR? But I think the main thing is, and this sounds like the most. Did you see there was that thing that did the rounds on Twitter last week that was tell something about your job or your industry that is obvious to you, but people outside of your industry struggle to understand. And it was really interesting. There was a lot of really interesting answers to that. And I didn't actually post it, but my answer to that would have been that PR is public relations. It's about relationships. And I think where bad PR, and I do see a lot of it, is where, people think that you can, just because you have a database, let's not even get into GDPR, but, just because you have a list of names, just because you have, like, say, Response Source or Gorkana or whatever, where you can legitimately find, you can just type in food and drink editors, bang, give yourself a list. Just sending someone a press release who, someone who has never met you or never heard of you, just sending someone a press release and saying, feature our client. Yeah. That to me is bad PR, because you're not doing anything to build a relationship. Now, I can't pretend that I have directly met or personally know every single person who I send, press releases to or send invitations to events to or whatever. But I can pretty much guarantee that they will, if an email from me pops up in someone's inbox, at a very, very bare minimum, they will at least be like, oh yeah, that's Hugh Wright.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's the PR guy. Oh right, okay. As an absolute bare minimum. Yeah. And at sort of the top of the scale, I don't even, some people, my sort of golden circle, let's say, I don't even need to send them a press release. It's like I pick up the phone, or I will see them over drinks, and it will be, let me tell you about this great place I'm working with. Yeah. Let me tell you about this great place I'm working with, and if you want to come on in for dinner with me or whatever, then please, let me know. It's about relationships, and I think that's the bad PR is where you forget it's about relationships. Yeah. And also, another thing, and okay, this is mischievous, and I really pray, judge not lest you be judged, because this might happen with mine, but friends, in the press or in the industry, will send me bad press releases.
All right, it's
as a bit of a gag. They'll sort of send me bad press releases, or sort of bad invitations, or badly worded pitches, and sometimes you look at them and just think, oh, goodness, and
that's a website in itself, isn't it?
Well, quite, yeah, but like I say, judge not lest you be judged. If one of mine ended up on there, I'd be absolutely heartbroken. Although saying that, I had I send my press releases and my news to some other PRs, and likewise they send theirs to me, because just because we are on paper competitors, but again, part of the joy of being in hospitality is you want to know where the good places are. And so if a friend of mine who is a PR has got a great new place, I want to know about it. So I'll send them my press releases, and one of my great friends and idols and mentors in the industry is Maureen Mills of Network London, and she's the doyen. She is the PR's PR. She just celebrated 30 years of living in London, and I think it's 29 years of having her business, and she's just, she's worked with the creme de la creme. She's worked with Simon Rogan and Heston Blumenthal, and every you go to any kind of the National Restaurant Awards the other week, with the 100 best restaurants in the country, and I was sitting next to Maureen, who is the most incredibly sort of humble and modest woman. She wasn't like sort of whooping and cheering every time, but literally it could have been the Maureen Mills Awards. She's that good, I've completely forgotten where I was going with this. Oh yeah, so and I remember sending a press release to Maureen once, and Maureen picked up the phone as Maureen does, and she said, Hugh, he's giving me a phone, Hugh, darling, I just wanted to let you know this really is a wonderful press release. This is ever so good. I've shared this with my team. I'm trying to do a Canadian accent, but probably unflattering. She said, this is a really wonderful press release. I've shared this with my team as an example of a good press release. And I just thought, wowzers, if Maureen Mills is
she's
saying that, it's like, okay, I'm doing something right. But yeah, so the bad PR is, if you just write a cliched, if you write sort of cliched, repetitive press release, people might feature it because, ultimately sites need content, and if they get some content, then, maybe you'll be happier featuring bad content than no content. Yeah. But yeah, I think, it's about remembering that it's relationships and having a certain quality to what you do.
Well, it's interesting. Just from the client side, and that's back to lastminute.com and all the way through and all the rest of it. I do remember like a number of occasions where me and the marketing team were actually sitting there rewriting the press releases, for the PRs. But then I was torn because I was like, Do they know something that I don't know, and maybe the way this is written, this might be?
I think there is an element of that. I think there is an element of that, and certainly, say I've looked at press releases. I mean, I tend to I like to keep things concise, if not necessarily short, because you do want to get all the information out. But sometimes I've seen press releases about new launches that run into like sort of 2 or 3 pages. And I just think, okay, wow, this is a bit epic. But again, like with you, I'll sort of look at those and think, well, okay, I know this agency and I respect this agency, or indeed, the person who's been sending it out, might be someone I know well. And I think often there is an element of that. But again, that's like with any industry. It's like, you might have someone like rewiring your fuse box or something at home, and you might, be absolutely certain that they're wiring it wrong. In which case, if you're absolutely certain that you know better, then great. But sometimes I think, yes, you do have to trust a professional, even though it doesn't look
sort of right.
Right.
And also, as you're saying, it's not just the press release alone, right? That's part of it, but there's a phone call to be had, or there's a meeting to be had, or there's a drinks to be had, or so that is only part of the picture as well.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing that I suppose going back to say bad PR, but I think is also bad business, and I think this is why a lot of new places, a lot of places fail within sometimes within, let's say, 6 months or a year, not very long at all. Is that you weight things so much just to the launch phase. Yeah. And as in literally like the few weeks in the run up to a launch and maybe the week of a launch, and then there's no strategy and there's no continuity, there's no plan for afterwards, and that to me is bad PR, because anyone, I mean, I say anyone, I don't want to disparage what I do, but ultimately, anyone can communicate that somewhere is open. Yeah. Whether you do it with helium balloons, or whether you do it with a press release, or whether you do it with phoning everyone in your phone book or whatever. Social media, anyone can communicate a launch, but then actually maintaining interest in somewhere in the weeks and months after a launch is a skill. People think, oh, well, what's PR? It's just champagne and press releases, which is part of it. Absolutely, it's not digging ditches in winter. It's hard work, but it's very rewarding and enjoyable work. But it's not just about the fanfare of hey, this great new place is open. It's actually about how do we keep people talking about somewhere for a good few months after it's open, so that the place can build momentum. Yeah,
I mean, it happens to us all the time, and it's funny, we do a lot of kind of restaurant launches and stuff, but we don't tend to do PR at all. So we maybe call in some others, or they've got their own agency or whatever it is. But what we tend to look at maybe is about 3 or 4 months out, once we know the date, if we've got that length of time. As you say, there's the launch period of, let's call that a month or so.
Yeah.
And then there's the after. And what we keep talking about is, the honeymoon period. And it's like, when the honeymoon's over, you've still got to keep the marriage alive, right? So in terms of that, what is your strategy? What do you tend to do then once as you say, the fanfare's gone?
So I think any clients listening will agree and sort of laugh knowingly at this, but I love a Gantt chart.
Okay.
Which sort of surprises people, because again, people think that it's all sort of fluffy and like I say, it's all sort of parties and sweetie darling. But actually, I like a Gantt chart, and I typically look at a launch period.
There's a T-shirt in that, isn't there?
Well,
I love a Gantt chart.
I love a Gantt chart. Yeah. I look at a launch period typically 4 months. 4 months is my kind of sweet spot. I have done launches in less, and equally I've worked with people after they've actually opened. But I look at, say, a period of about 4 months, and what I look at is, starting from about a month, maybe 6 weeks before you start, seeding the ground. So, that's getting the social media set up, building a community, starting engaging with people, getting a website up, getting an initial press release out, communicating that they're opening, then, working with them on, really fine-tuning the product and menu and brand identity and tone of voice and all of that. Then once somewhere actually opens, then obviously communicating that to the right people and titles and press and critics and so on, to get people in. And then, how you launch, whether you launch with, parties, whether you launch with events, whether you launch by inviting lots of people in for dinner or whatever, that then is is part of it. So that might be then, say, the first month of opening, but then also then planning ahead. And this is where sort of PR and marketing tie in. So you're then looking at, if they have the luxury of having someone in-house to do marketing, I always make sure that the PR plan overlays the marketing plan, so that you can look at, well, okay, what are like your seasonal marketing opportunities? What are your seasonal activities going to be? And then making sure that PR communicates those, and to the right people. This is going back to good PR. So, interesting elements. So, and also it can be places can open in phases. So, I was saying to you about these very, very long press releases which communicate absolutely everything about a place. That's great, but actually, say for example, if a restaurant has got a bar, and the bar serves as a standalone bar, so like, say, the cocktail or the wet led side of it is, as much an element as the food, I'll often look at sort of doing the bar later, or if there's, say, a retail side to it, or if there's private dining, or if there's an outdoor space, or if there's, an event side to things. So actually, rather than just like communicating absolutely everything at the beginning, and then, like having one big party where, all of your Instagrammers are there, and, you have like maybe one day of being the taste of Instagram, but then you're kind of sort of forgotten about. So I'll have a Gantt chart that will be sort of spread over 4 months, where there will be strategic milestones in terms of activity, and then how that activity is communicated throughout that period, so that actually what you get is yes, it's nice to create a big splash around your opening date, but then you also want then that to then ripple on, so that throughout those first few months, you've got, you don't want all press coming in the first week, because sure, you can get 20. I was saying to you about when the whole blogger thing, when we're just like sort of the 12 of us and we'd be invited, and sure, you'd get 12 blog posts in 1 week, but then there was no one else to invite. So I'll look at things that say, well, okay, let's in week 1, let's invite in, these people, then in week 2 we'll invite in these people, then maybe in week 3 we'll have a party celebrate, to open your private dining room, let's say. Then in week 4 we'll have an event for drinks press in the bar, so that people think, right, okay, this place does cocktails as well. And so it rolls gently through, that sort of 4-month-ish period.
I think it's interesting, and I really like that toast of Instagram phrase as well. That's a good one. You can TM that at some point. But I think that's really cool. But I think, in terms of, it's interesting. My heart sank a bit when you were saying about the marketing plan. And I just, you see it a lot, and it's like, we're going to have a new menu in spring. Is anyone dropping everything really? For, unless it's, actually I've just seen a post from Mac and Wild, the little Scottish, not that little, there's little here and the big one inside. And they've got a dive and deer, or something like that thing. But just the shots, amazing. It's like this sort of rich purple sort of venison laid out with lobsters, and and that's like, oh man, that's craveability. But we get asked all the time, and it's like, regimented. We're going to have a spring menu. There's probably not that much difference. There's nothing really on it to get excited about, and you're just like, I don't really know what to do.
I think also it's about being, it sounds stating the bleeding obvious, but it's about being innovative. And, anyone can sit down with a calendar and say, okay, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Easter, Christmas, Halloween,
Burns night.
Well, it's Bastille Day on Saturday, and funny
you're wearing the right T-shirt.
I guess I am indeed, yes. For the benefit of the listener, yes, I'm wearing a Breton shirt. But it's Bastille Day at the weekend, and I'm seeing a lot of places that are not French restaurants, or that even have a very tenuous connection, saying, hey, it's Bastille Day, we sell French beer. And it's like, come on, be a bit more creative than that. Just because there is a date in the calendar, it doesn't mean that you have to jump on it. And I think in terms of integrity, if your restaurant has nothing to do with France, or your product is not clearly French, celebrating Bastille Day, it's like, okay, someone has said, right, it's a marketing opportunity, and have jumped on it. And I think that's a bit lame, whereas, it's much more interesting to look at things that are particular to your restaurant. And one thing actually that we instigated at Aqua. I mean, the marketing director at Aqua is a lady called Hannah Berry. I don't know if you know.
I know the name.
Hannah is. She's. I think within in terms of restaurant marketing, I think there's a cadre of maybe like sort of half a dozen people who are at the very, very, very top of the game. And I think Hannah is absolutely one of them. And one of the things that Hannah and our team implemented was, because Aqua have Chinese restaurants, they have Japanese restaurants, they have a British restaurant, and they have a Spanish restaurant. So rather than just like doing, okay, it's Mother's Day, it's Father's Day, it's Valentine's Day, we actually looked at those countries. It's like, okay, Japan, I mean, the Japanese have some fabulous festivals, and they have, they have the micro seasons. They have something like 72 micro seasons, that last for like 4 days each. And it's things like, everyone, any Japanese restaurant will do something for Cherry Blossom Festival. But, are they doing something for the Cherry Blossom Falls micro season, or Light Rains micro season? And Aqua would be very, very innovative about that. And then for the Spanish restaurant, they would because Mother's Day in Spain is a different day from Mother's Day in the UK, and so they would do something for Mother's Day, Spanish Mother's Day. So that's really making you stand out in the marketplace. And
all those many festivals that go on, throughout the year in Spain as well, the regional ones, and
and things like for the Japanese restaurant Aqua Kyoto, which is, again, I don't work for them anymore, so this isn't any vested interest. It's just the food is phenomenal. I think it's some of the best Japanese food in London, and I love Japanese. But they did my pronunciation will be terrible. They're doing an ikigai menu at the moment, and ikigai is sort of a Japanese philosophy of living well and balance. And they've done sort of a whole menu based around it. Like, how clever is that? Whereas,
and it's premium and it's thought, and
exactly. Whereas some places just be like, oh, hang on, guys, Bastille Day. What have we got that's French? Oh, we sell champagne. Let's come and drink champagne on Bastille Day.
Yeah, come on.
Pull the other one.
It's not enough.
Yeah. But then you have places like Koba and King at Brasserie Zadal, who you eat free on Bastille Day if you turn up in a Breton shirt and a beret.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They've done it for years, and it's phenomenally popular. And people will, and it's quite generous. It's not just like you get a free bowl of soup. I mean, you get their full meal menu, which I think is $18.95 or something, includes a glass of wine, and people will understand me. Will queue for a couple of hours.
Yeah. Well, you're a berry away from a free meal.
Do you know, funny enough, I have my beret at home.
Oh, yeah?
I have my beret because, funny enough, I bought a beret along with a group of friends. And, stripes are very much part of my wardrobe, so I've always got a Breton shirt. But yeah, we bought berets and ordered them from Amazon. So I've actually still got my berets. So if I do ever need a free feed at Koba and King on Bastille Day, I can pop in. But that to me is innovative, and I think Koba and King with Brasserie Zadal, they own that space. They own the Bastille Day space, and obviously places like L'Escargot, which is arguably from London's oldest French restaurant. I think Mon Plaisir kind of battled them for that title. But something like L'Escargot, which is as French as Emmanuel Macron, fine, you do Bastille Day, go for it, go for your life. But when you've got an American bar saying, sandwich shop saying, oh, we've got brie.
We've got snails.
Yeah.
Just on, I guess, that thread, which we can tug at a bit more, we were talking about pride marketing earlier. And I was...
Bear with me while I just get up on my soapbox.
Well, I was speaking at an event the other day, and I had a few slides on it, and I think, again, hats off, there's some innovative stuff and interesting stuff going on. I think we as a restaurant industry seem to have supported it, and I'm saying seem to have supported it. But I felt there was a lot of opportunism.
I think, do you know what? And there's been a huge amount of opportunism, and I've only really noticed it this year. I don't know where it came from. Maybe it is like a shadowy cabal of marketers around the world have started it. But yes, suddenly this whole idea of Pride Month, this whole idea of Pride Month. Now, there's no such thing as Pride Month. I mean, this is, of course, my opinion. Others might disagree. But, some prides are in June, some prides are in July, some prides are in August. There's not this sort of Pride Month. And suddenly it came from nowhere where everyone was, changing their logo to the rainbow flag or whatever. And don't get me wrong, that there are some operators who have always been incredibly supportive of Pride. And, I get teased about this, but, I am a huge fan of Nando's.
Yeah.
I think Nando's are great. I love the food. I really do. Love the food. I think the experience is great. I think the product is great, etc. But Nando's are a really good example of a company who have supported prides all around the country. I've been to prides all around the country, and Nando's, wherever they wherever they have restaurants, if that city or town has a pride, whether it is the smallest pride ever, Nando's will support it, and they support it financially, and they support it by sending out their whole team to join the parade. I remember going, I think this year is the 10th anniversary of Norwich Pride. Now, my family live in Norwich and Norfolk, and I remember the first year Norwich Pride took place, and with my then boyfriend, I said, look, let's go, because my mum, bless her, had seen a poster for it, and she was super excited. She said, "Ooh, there's Norfolk Pride." And I said to my then boyfriend, I was like, look, this is either going to be great and there'll be a really good turnout, or it's going to be, 2 lesbians and a dog in a field, in which case, if we go, that'll double the numbers. So, let's
I'm up
go.
for either.
Yeah, let's go. And I just thought it'd be fun. I thought it'd be good to support a local pride in its first year. And we went, and actually it was, there was a great turnout. There were like a few hundred people. It wasn't huge, but there were a few hundred people. And Nando's were there, and they were there with staff, and they were there with support, and they were there with, badges and stickers and everything. And sure, yes, that's marketing for them, but it was absolutely sincere.
Felt genuine.
It felt genuine. And a company the size of Nando's did not have to turn out at this first ever Norwich Pride, but they did, and they do it all around the country. And so that to me is, it's almost like the marketing is in reverse. So yes, they know that they're getting their logo out there, they know that they're getting their name out there, but it is sincere. They're doing it because they want to. And then on some levels, you get people who are incredibly supportive, not just of Pride as an event, but are just genuinely supportive of the LGBT community, throughout the year. So, people like Alexis Gautier Soho, probably embarrassing for me to say it, but, he's incredibly generous and supportive and philanthropic, and does all sorts of things quietly to support LGBT causes. Hashtag client, but Victor Garvey at Rambla and Sibarita, and actually Victor, I won't mind me saying this, he actually asked me, a couple of weeks before Pride, he said, "Oh man," because he's got Rambla on Dean Street, and so like right in the epicenter of all the Soho Pride celebrations, and he was like, "Dude, everyone's putting up rainbow flags in their windows. People are painting the front of the shops and putting up signs. Do I do something? Do I put something on the menu? I just don't know what to do." And I was like, you kind of answered your own question. Yeah. Because if it doesn't sit right with you, if it doesn't sit right with you, if you feel that you're only doing something because you feel that you have to, then don't do it. But Victor, again, throughout the year, Victor, bless him, has never said no to any of, any cause that I sort of bring to him, not necessarily as his PR, but as, as a gay activist, any cause, however big or small. If I say to Victor, do you want to donate a dinner, or can we do an event, or can we host something? He does it. He's fantastically generous like that, and that's sincere, heartfelt support throughout the year.
Well, I think that's what I said, and it was a bit of a quip, but when I was presenting, it was like, being gay, lesbian, trans, whatever, in for Christmas, and I think it angered me. It actually angered me that, a lot of brands were just it's as if it's another Mother's Day, or as if it's another Bastille Day, and you're like,
that's what annoyed me.
Come on, guys.
That's what I mean. And I think the shame of that, is that then those companies who genuinely do invest not just money, but also, they invest time, and they have sort of staff training. It's companies whose lived values are to be proud, and which they may choose to most visibly demonstrate at Pride, but which are values which they live throughout the year, are kind of sadly getting rainbow washed, because, if everyone's doing it, and how much must it cost to, paint your shop front or change your logo, to the rainbow flag for maybe a day or maybe 48 hours, give that money to THT or Albert Kennedy Trust, homeless LGBT kids, in their thousands, up and down the country. Give that $5,000 or whatever, even if it's like a couple of £100, that couple of £100 that you spend, putting rainbow flags on your shop window for a day because you feel that it's a marketing opportunity. Give it to charity. Get a homeless child off the street for a week.
And I think, to your point, Nando's felt like they're one of the originals that really gave a shit and did it.
They're great. I mean, it's like the face here of their, their Soho restaurant is Greek Street, I think, or Greek Street or Dean Street, Frith Street, one of those. the facier of that is I mean, they changed it. They first changed it for Pride, I think, about 6 or 7 years ago, and they've kept it, and it's this fabulous. It's their chicken, mascot, but in the rainbow flag, and it's got a glittery front.
All the glitter, yeah.
And that's great, because that's a nice little nod to the LGBT, DNA of Soho, and that's cool, and that's fun. But that, like I say, they, pretty much every Pride in any city or town where they have a presence, they're there. So yeah, that's how to do Pride marketing well.
And good T-shirts, which said one of the years, that was the first time I saw it. It said "worth coming out for," which I just thought was like bang on, so good.
Yeah,
But for us, we've moved to Brighton, so we're sort of in the thick of it down there, and it's just so much fun. It's just
absolutely,
yeah.
And I think it's important that we do have fun, not just around Pride. I think around everything. I think hospitality is about warmth of welcome and having fun, and I just think sure, people need to use what marketing opportunities there are, but just do it sincerely. And if you're just like putting up a rainbow flag because you feel you have to, I mean, try not being LGBT friendly in Brighton.
Yeah, you're not going to last too long. But I think the rainbow washing.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, is the quote that's good. But I think it's quite refreshing down in Brighton, where I think the guys and girls down there, I think there's a bit of sort of naivety in a good way, in that they're not part of the corporateness of the that London can bring sometimes, and the stresses and the strains I'm sure they've got, but it just feels like most of them are having much more fun.
Brighton, I mean, don't get me wrong, I mean, there are some very, very polished and professional operators in Brighton. There are some very, very slick restaurants down there, but the whole ethos of Brighton, and I think even those slick operators, they're still staffed by Brighton people, and Brighton is still, it is a bit punky, it is a bit rebellious, it is still a little bit sort of rough around the edges in a brilliant way. So whilst they've got the marketing smarts, they're not necessarily they're not just like jumping on every bandwagon. No. How do we appeal to Brighton customers, and people from further afield, and so I mean, I love Brighton. I think Brighton's restaurant scene is getting really exciting now. And there's always been like those kind of quieter places, but and it's interesting to see Brighton operators expanding outside of Brighton.
Yep.
I think that, say, like with the Coal Shed, the Coal Shed sort of, rather than being a big London operator going to Brighton, it's a big Brighton operator. They're a big fish in Brighton, coming to London and open the Coal Shed to great acclaim. And
Chili Pickle to Guildford.
But why can't Chili Pickle come to London? Like, Chili Pickle is just an outstanding restaurant.
Alan and Don, please let us know.
Oh, just come to, I mean, honestly, come to London. I mean,
they're fabulous. The pair of them are fabulous.
And when I saw the headline that they were expanding, it's like, Chili Pickle to open, I was thinking, oh, please be London, please be London. It's like Guildford, it's like, I mean, lucky Guildford. I mean, they've got an Ivy as well, so.
I think it was the old Jackson and Rye site. Is that what they took? I think. Maybe?
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Possibly. I think, might be wrong, but I'm sure it was. What else was I going to say? Oh, just a point on Brighton. I must take you to the Brighton Food Awards next year. You need to come with me.
I would love to come to the Brighton
It is the most fun night out. Book the next day off.
We'll do it.
Because it's really drunken.
I can combine it with a visit to my goddaughter.
It's Brighton's best stuff. So yeah, it's really, I think it's like February or something. So a couple of other things then. Clients and stuff then. So Garvey, who very kindly put some of the questions together, we're talking about Paladar.
Paladar are great. Paladar, so it's a Latin American restaurant, bar and bodega in Elephant and Castle. It's owned by a lovely chap called Charles Tyler, who used to own a restaurant called Champur Champur, which is in Bermondsey. It's a Malay Asian restaurant. It was quite well known, and Charles sold Champur Champur about 3-4 years ago. And set up a travel company specialising in Latin America. He's very passionate about Latin America and the culture and countries of Latin America. And Charles basically, I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but Charles basically got bitten by the restaurant bug again. I think once you've got being restaurateur in your blood, it's there. It's not going anywhere. And so he just earlier this year, sort of actually very quietly, sort of at the end of last year, opened this lovely place in Elephant and Castle, specialising in the foods of Latin America, and it's not sort of slavishly authentic. He's been very clear from the start. It's not about this dish is Colombian, this dish is Brazilian. It's, he's got a great chef, a guy called Jose Guevara, who has sort of a bit of a magpie in terms of sort of the flavours and dishes of Latin America, to put together this fantastic menu. And he's got a really, really great team. So Jose is an amazing chef. His sommelier is Colombian, Rafa, and he's put together an amazing all Latin American wine list. There's all Latin American spirits. The bodega is a shop, so they have a cafe in there during the day. But at night, it's got a sort of private, not private dining, but it's got a kind of a chef's table view into the open kitchen. They sell all of the wines. They sell retail. They do cigars, which they've got a lovely courtyard garden, and it's. The art is Latin American, and they're doing Latin American poetry readings, and they've got an art exhibition there at the moment. And it's what's been really lovely about working with Paladar is just of almost more than anywhere I've worked with, it's really got heart. It's really got, it's really got a heart and soul. It's not just a business. And when Charles and I first met, sort of going through like the pitching process, and, we talked about it. And initially, like, when he sort of contacted me and said, okay, so I'm opening I've opened a Latin American restaurant in Elephant and Castle. Initially, I thought, could be tricky because it's a bit niche, and it's a bit niche, and it's. Don't get me wrong, I love Elephant. I've always lived South London, so it's not about Elephant and Castle snobbery. I was thinking, that could be a tricky one. But honestly, I went and I had lunch with Charles there, and honestly, from that first lunch, and from just talking to him and just hearing about the restaurant and the project and what he wanted to achieve through it, I just thought, absolutely, this is someone I want to work with. It was just great, and it's been a really it'd be like a great case study, I think, for even if I do say myself, kind of for good PR.
Well, this is what Gabby's saying. So I mean, in the notes that she's very kindly sent, she was just saying, not usual PR, which is big compliments. She can be quite cynical sometimes, so that's big compliments. And also, made me want to check them out. I live local. I know Hugh's behind this.
That's a lovely thing to say. And it's. I mean, when I'm going back to you saying about what approach do I take to a launch? So with that, we were very clear. We said, right, let's do 3 months, because actually it was already open, so we didn't have that sort of extra month run up. He'd opened it sort of quietly, so it was announcing it as a new opening. But yeah, the plan was always to have a rolling coverage. So we didn't do a launch party, we didn't do sort of big events, and it was very much the way that I've gone about it has been that very one-to-one. Like I say, it's public relations, so it has been a case of obviously, of course, you send out a press release to, a database or whatever, but it's then been a case of, going to people individually and saying, I think you will like this restaurant. Would you like to come? Yeah. And what's been really, really lovely has been that every single person, like genuinely, well, actually, no, there was one exception. There was one guy who was a little bit lukewarm, but every single person who I've booked in or who I've dined with there myself has said, not just that was good, but it was amazing. They've absolutely loved it, because I think they have seen that heart and soul that I saw when I was, pitching to them and first started working with them. Because you just see how really sincere it is. It's not that someone has thought, okay, I'm going to have a themed restaurant. It is someone who's like, right, I love hospitality, I love being a restaurateur, I love Latin America, and I'm going to build a team of really great, skilled people who also love it and who share that. And you feel that. You feel that when you walk in. You feel that when you sip your first cocktail. You feel that when the food starts coming. You feel that when the wine starts flowing. When the music,
it sounds like a full 360.
It really
sort of experience.
It is probably.
You've got me on the cigars as well. Like I'm thinking that sounds great.
It is probably. Of all the restaurants I've launched or all the restaurants I've worked with, in terms of, and I don't want to say concept, because concept suggests that it's a kind of off-the-shelf, but in terms of what it is, it's the most thoroughly and sincerely thought out and realised project that I can remember working with. And it's a lovely place, and it has been really, really rewarding, to have people go. And I mean, Hot Dinners, Catherine and Gavin from Hot Dinners.
I used to sit next to Gavin at lastminute.com.
Oh, there you go.
Go back a long way.
So yeah, Catherine and Gavin, I will admit, I kept sort of cajoling them because I was sort of sending them the information, and they featured it in the new openings. But I kept saying, well, there's an open invitation to come anytime you like, and they live in North London, and so Elephant and Castle is a schlep. I knew Elephant and Castle would be a schlep for a lot of people. There is still this snobbery of coming south of the river. Yeah. But they came and they loved it. And the next day, sort of, Catherine sent me an email saying, I am so glad you persisted. I'm so glad you persisted and persuaded us to make the trip.
They seem to be doing a great job as well.
They're great. I think, do you know what? I think hot dinners, this is a bit of a tangent, but you really notice that Catherine went full time, because it was for years. It was something they were both sort of holding down full time day jobs and doing it, and now Catherine is doing it full time, and I think you really notice the difference that's made in terms of the breadth of the content, the tone, just the whole tone of it and the feel of it. This may be something that they've had for ages, but I noticed the other day that they've integrated booking into the into the site now. So the other day, I went on there as everyone in the industry does, to look. I was looking, thinking, right, okay, where's new maybe that I should be checking out and sort of adding to my list, and they've integrated, I think it's Res Diary, into the site, so there you are on your phone, you don't need to leave the site anymore. So that's a genius move. I think of all the sort of let's call them, let's say, the aggregator sites that cover restaurant news and openings. I think Hot Dinners is
still the
nailing
one.
it.
Still the one.
I think Code sort of for it B2B, Code for the industry, I think there's nothing like it. Code is nailing that, and then Hot Dinners for sort of the wider public.
It's my first go-to place, because you get asked all the time, where's good to go, and actually I end up going on there and having a look, because you don't know all the time, what's happening.
Well, I think also the great thing with Hot Dinners is, and it was very clever actually, because they feature, or they try to feature all new openings, purely from not necessarily visiting or reviewing them, but just in terms of their what's open this month. They do try to keep up with everything. But they just this week in the newsletter sort of did, I think I said something like 127 restaurants have opened in the first 6 months of the year. So they've done what they call it their Uber edit of the best, the sort of best of the best. Edit it down, I think, to about sort of 40 or so, 30 or 40 that they think are the best. And I think that's a really, really clever thing to do. But the beauty of Hot Dinners is that everything, that everything's on there. So if you just want to know what new restaurants have opened, whereas some sites, and I do understand why they do it, but some sites only feature places that they like the sound of. They only feature places that they think their readers are going to be interested in. And so as a result, it's kind of, you get it can become a bit of an echo chamber sometimes. So it's like, well, if you think that your readers are predominantly going to be interested in, East End places with natural wine lists and sharing, small plates.
And incentivised to do so sometimes as well, right?
Well, I think that's a bit of a grey area, isn't it? Because there's the disclosure on that, I think, is very bad. But I'd rather sort of go to a site that features everywhere. And does the occasional edit. But I think that Uber edit that they did in this week's newsletter was really smart. I mean, and Paladar was in there, which I'm delighted to report.
I need to try and see Gav at some point. I just haven't seen him for years, but just a lovely, lovely man.
Yeah, they're lovely people.
Yeah,
and live and breathe restaurants. I mean, they just absolutely love them, and they're supportive of the industry. They if they don't like somewhere, they won't feature it. But they're supportive, and they always look for the positive. They're looking for good news stories. They're championing places sort of all over London. They do their guides. I mean, today's their newsletter, they're sort of obviously commiserating about the football, and then saying, well, here's our guide to, that we've still got summer, the weather's still nice, and here's our guide to great summery dishes, go and try these great summer dishes. I think what a lovely thing to do, what a lovely positive approach to take.
For an Irish person. So, nice. So, I'm conscious of time. So, a couple of final quick fire things.
Okay, hit me.
So, martinis,
yes.
You're my expert.
Thank you. I love martinis. And some people will scoff because I like vodka martinis, and there's all this snobbery about vodka martinis, not a martini. Bore off. I love a martini. I have researched this very extensively, I do love a very dry vodka martini.
What's the vodka of choice?
Do you know? controversial point of view here. If the martini is made well, it doesn't always make the most enormous amount of difference, because there are vodkas that I typically don't. I won't say anything. I won't criticize any brands by name, but I'll tell you the ones that I do like. But there are some vodkas that actually say with a mixer I don't particularly like, or I don't particularly enjoy, or if the martini's not made brilliantly, I won't necessarily enjoy. But if the martini is made brilliantly, often the vodka doesn't make too much of a difference. There are some lovely, Chase vodka, Chase vodka, which is, proper potato vodka, is great. I do find potato vodkas make better martinis. Connick's Tail is a lovely one, and is more widely available now. Connick's Tail is a great one. Tito's is a really good one. As long as the martini's made properly, the vodka doesn't always make a huge amount of difference.
And venues of choice?
So Egerton House Hotel, and I think it's one of these. I almost don't want to give away my best kept secret. The Egerton House Hotel is it's sort of halfway between Knightsbridge and South Kent, and it's got a tiny little bar. Really tiny, there's about sort of 4 tables. They also use it for afternoon tea, so obviously if you go in and they've got a busy afternoon tea service, probably haven't got a hope. They do take bookings, I think, for about 5:30, just 2 seats at the bar, and they have a martini trolley, and the way that they do it is they keep their gin and their vodka in the freezer, so it's all syrupy and cold. The glasses are kept in the freezer, so the glass is all frosted. There is no ice involved, there is no shaking, there is no stirring. They wheel the trolley out, bring it to your table. They add, an infinitesimally small amount of vermouth from a dropper, swill it out, and then just pour your, vodka or gin right up to the brim of the glass. Add your twist or olives or onion if you're having a Gibson, whatever, and then they will lift it very, very carefully over to your table and put it down in front of you. And the only way to drink it is to lean forward and basically slurp it like a cat, because it's so full. If you pick it up, you're guaranteed to spill it. So then they call it the Egerton slurp. Nice. So you have to lean forward. I don't know if you saw Grace Dent, in her Guardian reviews, she has the little sidebar of, Grace's thing, week in food. So as well as the reviews, it's Grace's week in food. There's a lovely, lovely picture of her doing the Egerton slurp. So she's caught onto it. So I think now that, Grace has caught onto the place, I'm never going to get a seat again. But and it's super fun. And they bring out lovely nibbles, because I think nibbles with a cocktail are essential. Yes. I love a nice, and they bring out really, really nice cocktail nibbles. And then if you go there, depending on the time of day, they'll bring out canapes as well. Nice. So, and don't get me wrong, it's 18 quid for a martini, but it's huge. It's huge. It's incredibly strong. It's beautifully presented. So it's really good. And then, Quo Vadis are always good. They're a good.
It's where we met.
It's where we met. Yeah, Quo Vadis are good. They do I think it's Wednesdays. They do a members happy hour on martini. It's £5 for a martini, which is dangerous because I could drink 3 martinis in an hour, and all of my worst drunken exploits have been after 2 or 3 martinis.
Yeah, it's always bad.
But yeah, Egerton House I absolutely love. And there's always something magical. Claridge's Bar, there's always something magical about as well, because they've got Claridge's Bar and they've got the Fumoir, and the Fumoir is Fumoir always feels like more of a champagne kind of place, or a fruity cocktail. The Fumoir's kind of a little bit sexy and loose, whereas Claridge's Bar is just brilliant. If you sit in Claridge's Bar and sip on a martini, all's right with the world. And yes, of course, you're paying 20 odd quid for it, but I remember taking my now fiance, so it obviously worked, but I remember taking him for his birthday, I think his first birthday after we'd got together as a couple. And we'd been for lunch, and I said, let me take you to Claridge's. Have you ever been to Claridge's? Oh no, I've never been to Claridge's. It's right. So I took him to Claridge's for a martini, and of course it ended up becoming 3 martinis and
getting thrown out.
150 quid. Didn't get thrown out. I was once helped out of Claridge's.
Were you?
Many, many, many years ago, I wasn't thrown out. I was helped. I was helped out of Claridge's for consuming a few too many martinis, and you could smoke indoors in those days. And I was puffing away on a big cigar, and I'd borrowed somehow a lady's fur cape, and I kind of stumbled out into the lobby of Claridge's smoking a cigar and wearing a fur cape. Tripped over the edge, as in the edge. You two were sitting, you two were in the, So tripped over the edge, sort of smoking a cigar and wearing a fur cape, and then started going around in the famous Claridge's revolving door going, wee, wee, at which point Roman, who's their legendary head doorman, sort of just sort of took me by the arm and said, come along now, sir. I wouldn't want you to hurt yourself. Shall we help you into a taxi? It's like, I think it might be. But yeah, something incredibly magical about Claridge's bar.
At least you remembered what he said.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Right, so last thing is just in terms of any one final tip. So you have got a restaurant you're launching, or it needs a bit of revitalisation. What do you think?
I think look, this is going to sound ridiculous because it's like turkeys voting for Christmas, but I think the most important thing is, if you're considering PR, is, talk to some people, speak to different agencies, get a feel for it, and work with someone who you feel that you can have a good relationship with. And the turkeys voting for Christmas bit is that there have been a number of occasions where I've met, potential clients, people have come to me and they've said, we're doing this or, whatever. And I've actually said, you don't need PR.
Yeah.
I've actually said, do you know what? Don't hire me. You can do this, this and this. You can do this yourself. You've got the resources to do it. You don't actually need PR. But the thing to understand with PR is that it's not, it isn't a one-size-fits-all. Different agencies take different approaches, and I'm now working, I'm lucky enough to be working with a couple of groups. When I started off, all of my clients were small independents, and, that is still the bulk of what I do. But I'm working with a couple of restaurant groups now, 7 apiece, and they work with me rather than a larger agency because they like my one-to-one, bespoke, personal way of doing things. And that works better for their brand than having all the coverage in the world because they've got 4 people working on their account.
Yeah.
So those groups have done me the honour, of choosing me because they like my approach. So my tip would be, don't write off PR. Don't write it off as being something that you can't afford or something that you don't need. But equally, if you are going to do it, spend time finding the person or people who are going to do the best job for you and who you can have a relationship with and who you can, really discuss and say that this is working or I don't feel that's working. Yeah. So, that would be it. And be nice. Be kind.
Be kind. That's the thing. It's the main thing, right?
Yeah.
We've got to live with each other, so be kind. Well, Hugh, thank you so much for your time today.
You.
This
has
been an epic episode. So, congratulations on your upcoming nuptials.
Thank you very much. Almost exactly a year away.
Yes.
So, the countdown has begun.
So you can follow you on social media to see the updates?
You can. Well, yes. So, at HR Wright is the personal one. So, or there's at HGH, RCHRD, WRGHT, so Hugh Richard Wright with no vowels is the business one. I've got my kind of slightly more business account and then the personal one for the personal stuff.
So we will put that in the notes as well. People can link to you and stuff.
And at Hugh Richard Wright on Instagram.
And yeah, if you can ever get me on a night out with Grace,
I will see what I can do.
I'm completely in love with her. I think she's just fabulous. And I like the wickedness as well.
I think great. I think Grace has brought a real freshness to restaurant critiquing, which no disrespect to any individual critics, but I think as a craft, it runs risk of getting a bit stale. There's not been a much new blood in any publication. This isn't specific to any publication for a long time, and I think Grace has brought a real levity and a levity and humour and just youthfulness to the art of restaurant writing. I think she's great, and she's always just such a hoot to read.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. You just smile every Saturday.
Yeah,
it's a cracker. Great. All right, we'll leave it there. We'll let you escape.
Thank you very much.
And thanks so much for coming, man. Appreciate it.
Great pleasure.
Wow, that was fun. So thank you so much to Hugh Richard Wright. I always think about HRH when I say that, but it's Hugh Richard Wright for coming in and just sharing his joy and fun and laughter with us in terms of what it means to do great PR for restaurants all of the interesting notes about where's good and where to go and what's happening in town, and also hopefully just some advice that's going to help you in your career when you're promoting your business. A massive thanks as well to anyone and everyone that is listening to the Spectacular Marketing Podcast. Also, anyone and everyone that is writing to us on a daily, weekly basis. Thanks so much for your input and your comments and your support. We really appreciate it. If you've got time, we'd love you to rate and review the Spectacular Marketing Podcast. That would be really helpful. And also, if you can just tell one friend about it, to download it and have a listen, we'd really appreciate that too. A huge thanks to the exec production team, Gaz, Gabi and Mahal, for everything that they do in terms of putting the podcast together. I'm Mark McCulloch, and this was Spectacular.